So if you play out China's collapse, how do you anticipate that goes? Do you think, what do you think, first of all, what do you think is like the first piece to drop?
Well, Chinese history is rich with examples of how it all falls apart in a short period of time. If I were a betting man, I think that the two most vulnerable parts of the international system right now are energy transport and food production. About 80% of the calories that humans produce are produced with at least one imported input, whether it's pesticide, fertilizer, fuel, tractors, whatever. And with the Chinese, it's more like 90%.
90% is imported.
Yeah. Well, no, not their food is imported. The inputs.
The inputs.
The input strain. And 90% of the calories they produce are dependent upon a foreign support system. In the United States, it's less than 10. We produce most of what we need locally, and most of the rest comes from Canada. But you interrupt the food supply chain in any meaningful way, and China is only one of a host of countries that has some very real problems. Now, China faces the biggest one in absolute terms because of the size of their population. But with the Russians having their problems, the Russian space is the world's largest single supplier of fertilizer of all types. So we are already knee-deep in a fertilizer crisis globally. And we're seeing industrial accidents in the Russian space that are so big you can see them from orbit because, a lot of petroleum stuff explodes if it doesn't go right. And the Russian facility has been held together with duct tape and Western tech for a while now. That's all gone now. So China, being kind of the last man in line to get a lot of this stuff, is in a very vulnerable position. We're probably going to see about 1 million barrels a day of Russian crude fall offline within the next few weeks as part of the price cap that the Europeans are putting into place. But more important, all the insurance firms have said they're not going to deal with Russia anymore. So you're not supposed to sail at all with your ship if you don't have an insurance policy. So countries like China and India are stepping in and offering sovereign indemnifications, but that's something they've never done before. And so if there's ever a case where a ship, for whatever reason, needs to file a claim, it's going to immediately go to international arbitration because they have no method for the payout. As soon as that happens, no one's going to take an Indian insurance policy again. That's another 1 million to 2 million barrels a day that goes offline. And then all the crude that the Chinese get from eastern Siberia is from fields that the Russians never developed themselves. That was all BP. BP's gone. So we don't know how long the Russians can keep it operating, but we know it's going to go to zero. We just don't know how long it's going to take. And the Chinese are the last in line for all of this stuff. And if you have a food or an energy crisis, or God forbid, both at the same time, on top of a health crisis, on top of government incompetence, there is no way a central government holds together in that sort of environment. Now, like I said, Chinese history is rich with ways that can all fall apart. Oftentimes it's based on having this hyper-centralization and an incompetent leader, or incompetent leader cadre maybe is a better way to phrase that. But how it usually goes is that the North kind of falls in on itself. It falls into famine. It falls into tyranny. You get hundreds of millions of people suffering from malnutrition and then ultimately dying. The coast goes one way. The interior kind of breaks off and shatters. And then the cities of the coast in the south, your Shanghai, your Fujian, your Guangzhou, your Hong Kong, they basically become independent city-states and integrate with foreign powers primarily in order to get food. And if you look back at the last 14 centuries, for almost that entire period until 1945, the city-states have been dependent upon foreigners to keep themselves alive. So we're really just reverting to a historical mean here.